I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how I caught my wife cheating on me, but here I am. Her name's Lisa, and we'd been together for almost 5 years. At first, everything seemed fine. We had our routines, shared laughs, went on trips, and I genuinely thought she was the one. Sure, there were little disagreements here and there, nothing out of the ordinary. But in the last few months, I started noticing subtle changes that didn't sit right with me. It all began with little things. Her phone became more secretive, she was spending more time on it, and her excuse was always just work stuff, or nothing, just friends. She'd get defensive if I asked who she was texting or who she was talking to late at night. I thought maybe I was just paranoid, but then I caught her in a lie that made my stomach drop. She told me she was out with her friend Emily, but I saw her texting someone late at night with a name I didn't recognize. The conversation was too intimate, too flirty. I remember sitting there, pretending to be busy with my own stuff, but my eyes kept drifting to her phone. I saw the messages, things like "can't wait to see you tonight" and "you always make me feel so alive." My heart started pounding, my mind was racing, I felt sick. How long had this been going on? Was this about sex? Did she actually love this guy? Or was she just bored and wanted some excitement? The worst part was her reaction when I confronted her about it. I didn't even say much, I just showed her the messages. Her face went pale for a second, then she threw up her hands and started lying her ass off. "It's nothing, just some guy from work who's flirting, it's harmless, you're overthinking things." But I knew better. I could tell she was lying, and I was furious that she could even lie so easily. It was a gut punch to realize the woman I trusted, the woman I thought I knew, had been sneaking around behind my back. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and just devastated. That's when the realization hit me. This wasn't a one-time thing. There was more to this than just a one-night stand or some stupid flirtation. She was lying and hiding something, and I was finally starting to see the truth. In that moment, I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. Part of me wanted to confront her brutally, to call her out, to make her feel the pain she'd caused me. But another part was afraid of what would come next. Was this the end of us? Could I forgive her? Or was I just fooling myself into thinking we could fix this? I felt numb, but I also knew I couldn't just ignore what I'd seen. My gut told me I needed to dig deeper. After that night, everything felt like a terrible fog. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work. My mind kept circling back to her messages, the way she lied so effortlessly. I started to pick up on even more subtle signs, her phone always near her, even when she went to the bathroom. She'd be quick to hide her screen if I walked into the room. Every little thing just reinforced the gut feeling I had. She was still hiding something. One day, I decided to go through her stuff when she was at work. I know, bad move, but I was desperate. I had to find out the truth once and for all. I rummaged through her purse, her drawers, her emails. It didn't take long before I found the real proof, screenshots of messages, some from a guy named Mike and others from her secret email account. The messages were explicit, overtly flirtatious, and clearly about sex. Not just some innocent conversations. They were about meeting up, planning late-night encounters, talking about her desires, her appetite for this guy. I remember feeling my stomach turn over. All this time she'd been lying straight to my face, telling me it was just harmless flirting. But no, she was actively sneaking around, screwing around, and lying her ass off about it. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to find undeniable proof. And the worst part, she'd been so good at hiding it, so convincing, until now. I felt like a fool, like a sucker who'd been played. When she came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch, her phone in my hand, ready to confront her. I was angry, yes, but also hurt beyond words. She saw the look on my face and immediately started spinning her bullshit. "You have no right to invade my privacy," she snapped. "This is overblown. It's just sex and I'm not hurting anyone. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like I was some jealous psycho invading her space because I was insecure. I told her I knew everything, about the messages, the email, the secret encounters. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she kept lying, denying everything. "You're just jealous because I'm more successful than you, because I look better than your pathetic ass," she spat. "You think I'd risk everything for some stupid fling? You're crazy." She looked at me with pure contempt like I was just some inconvenience she had to deal with. That moment, I saw the true nature of her, bitchy, manipulative, and completely self-centered. She lied so effortlessly, so convincingly, that I almost believed her for a second. But I knew better now. I saw her for what she was, a woman who was willing to cheat, lie, and manipulate to get what she wanted. And I was just the fool who'd been blind for so long. My heart was pounding, and I felt this mixture of rage, heartbreak, and disgust. I was done being the naive husband who thought everything was perfect. That night, I knew I had to decide what I was going to do next. The days that followed were some of the most intense of my life. I could barely eat or sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face sneering at me, her words ringing in my ears. But at the same time, a strange clarity started to emerge. I realized I couldn't keep going like this, living in the shadow of her lies. I had to plan my next move carefully because I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. I decided I needed proof beyond just the texts and emails I'd found. I wanted to catch her in the act if I could. So I started paying closer attention, her schedule, her phone, her habits. I also installed a simple tracking app on her phone, not to stalk her, but to see if she was truly going out with Mike or whoever else she was hiding. I wanted concrete evidence, not just suspicion. It took a few days, but sure enough, I saw her making plans. She was meeting him that very weekend at a hotel downtown. My heart sank, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. Now I knew for sure she wasn't just flirting, she was actively cheating. I remember the night before she was due to meet him, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my apartment, staring at her photos on the wall, feeling betrayed, broken. I thought about everything we'd built, all the plans we had. How could she do this? Was she ever truly happy with me? Or was I just some guy she settled for while she chased some kind of thrill? All those questions swirled around in my head. The anger started to build again, but this time I also felt a deep sadness, a kind of mourning for who I thought she was. The day of the meetup, I decided I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd confess. I wanted proof, but I also wanted to make sure she knew I was onto her. So I set up a little plan. I followed her to that hotel, kept my distance, and waited until she went inside. I had my phone ready, prepared to record. If I could get any evidence of what was happening. It was a tense couple of hours, but I stayed hidden, my stomach in knots. When she finally came out, I saw her slip her phone into her purse and I snapped a few pictures from a distance. That was the proof I needed. She was cheating on me with some guy named Mike, and she didn't care who saw. That moment was a turning point. I felt a mixture of rage and relief. Rage because she'd done this to me, and relief because now I had undeniable proof. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, and I certainly couldn't stay with her after this. I had to decide what to do next, and I knew my options were limited. I could confront her publicly, threaten her with the evidence, or I could just walk away. Honestly, I was leaning toward walking away. I was exhausted from fighting, from feeling like a fool. But I also knew I had to be smart about it, careful not to let her manipulate me further. That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the photos I took. My mind was racing. With all the possibilities, the betrayal hit me hard, but I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I finally saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who'd thrown everything away for some stupid fling. I knew from that moment I had to get out of this, no matter how much it hurt. It was time to focus on myself, to heal, and to move on from the woman who didn't deserve my trust or respect anymore. The next day, I woke up feeling like I was carrying a weight I couldn't shake. The proof was there, staring at me through those photos, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see it. My mind was racing. Should I confront her now? Should I wait? The urge to just rip the Band-Aid off and expose everything was strong, but I also knew she'd lie her way out of it if I wasn't careful. I decided to wait a bit to plan my move. I spent hours figuring out exactly what I was going to say, how I'd present the evidence, and what I wanted from her, whether it was an explanation, an apology, or just to get her out of my life. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of anger every time I thought about how she'd lied to my face, how she'd dismissed my feelings, all for some guy she barely knew. That thought made me feel sick. How could she be so selfish? So damn bitchy and dismissive. I'd never seen her like that before, so cold, so manipulative. When she finally came home that evening, I was ready. I didn't say a word at first. I just sat there with my phone, showing her the pictures I took. Her face twisted into this ugly sneer when she saw them. "What the hell is this?" I asked calmly but firmly. Her eyes darted around, her face flushing with anger. "You're stalking me," she spat, trying to brush it off, but I pressed on. "No, Lisa, I'm just showing you that I know the truth. You've been cheating on me with some guy named Mike, haven't you?" Her eyes widened for a second, then she looked away, trying to act nonchalant. Her mask cracked and her voice got bitchy fast. "I was just having some fun. It doesn't mean anything. You're making a big deal out of nothing," she insisted, trying to dismiss it all, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I'd seen enough, that I knew she'd been lying about everything. She started to panic, her tone rising. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I look better than your pathetic ass. You're insecure and that's why you're doing this." Her words stung, but I was beyond caring about her insults. I felt a strange mix of disgust and relief. Disgust that she could be so vile, and relief that I finally knew the truth. She was a liar and a cheat. I told her I was done, that I'd had enough of her bullshit. Her face contorted with fury and she started yelling, calling me paranoid, insecure, a loser. But I just stared at her, cold and calm, knowing I wasn't going to be fooled again. That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay and be her doormat anymore. I'd been blinded by love, but I was waking up now. I told her I wanted a divorce, that I couldn't live with her lies and betrayal. She yelled, begged, even tried to manipulate me, but I wasn't having it. I packed my stuff that night and left her apartment. It felt like I was finally breaking free from a nightmare I'd been stuck in for too long. It was the first step to reclaiming my life, no matter how much it hurt. I knew I'd have to face the fallout. She'd try to spin things, accuse me of stalking or being crazy, but I didn't care anymore. I had the evidence, I had my dignity, and I was done playing the fool. Moving out was hard, but it was necessary. I realized I'd been so desperate to hold on to what I thought was a perfect marriage that I ignored all the warning signs. Now, I was finally woke up to her true colors. It was time to heal, time to rebuild myself, and I knew from this point forward I'd never let some manipulative bitch control my life again. The days after I moved out were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, a strange sense of relief. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life, but at the same time, I knew I'd made the right decision. Still, it wasn't easy to just walk away from everything we'd built. I kept replaying her words, her lies, and that horrible night I caught her. It made me realize how much I'd sacrificed, how much I'd ignored just to keep the peace. But now, I was finally free from her grip, and honestly, it felt like I'd just been released from prison. I spent the first few weeks trying to process what had happened. I reached out to some friends, talked openly about everything, and surprisingly, a lot of them told me they'd seen the signs too but didn't want to interfere. It was comforting to finally have people who understood what I was going through. I also went through all the evidence again, reviewed her messages, looked at her call logs, and reminded myself that I wasn't crazy for feeling hurt and angry. She'd been lying, cheating, and dismissing my feelings for months, maybe longer. One thing that hit me hard was how she tried to spin everything when I told her I was leaving. She called me all sorts of names: paranoid, insecure, even obsessive. She insisted I was the one at fault, saying I was just jealous because I wasn't good enough for her. The bitchy attitude she had when she was caught was nothing compared to her trying to manipulate me afterward. It was pathetic, really, but I didn't fall for it. I knew her game now. As the weeks went by, I started to rebuild my confidence. I got back into my hobbies, hung out with friends more often, and even started dating again. It wasn't easy. I kept having flashbacks, moments of regret and anger. But I also knew I deserved better than a woman who would cheat and lie, a woman who had no respect for me or what we had. Leaving her was hard, but it was also a wake-up call. I finally saw my own worth and understood that I shouldn't settle for someone who didn't value me. The biggest lesson I learned from all this was to trust my instincts. I'd seen the signs early on but ignored them because I loved her. Never again. I realized that my happiness and self-respect come first, and I don't need someone who treats me like an afterthought. I know she's probably out there, living her life, not caring about the damage she caused. And honestly, I don't care anymore. I've moved on, and I will keep my distance. Looking back, I wish I'd caught her sooner, but I also knew I had to go through this to truly see what she was capable of. For anyone out there dealing with similar betrayal, my advice is this: trust your gut, gather your proof, and don't be afraid to walk away. You're better without the drama, the lies, and the betrayal. Sometimes, the hardest thing is the best thing you can do for yourself. And at the end of the day, you'll come out stronger, more aware, more resilient, and finally free from the people who don't deserve your trust. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this ordeal changed me. I used to believe in the fairy tale idea that if you loved someone enough, things would work out no matter what. But that's not true. Love isn't enough when someone is dishonest and manipulative. It's a harsh lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. I don't hate her, at least not anymore. I just feel sorry for her, honestly. She's lost her integrity, her respect, and the trust of someone who once thought she was the world to him. What's left now is a sense of clarity I never had before. I see her for who she really is: bitchy, selfish, a liar. And I see myself for who I am: someone who was naive for too long but who finally woke up. I'm grateful that I found the strength to leave, even if it hurt like hell. Because if I hadn't, I'd still be trapped in that cycle of lies, pretending everything was okay. Now, I'm finally free to rebuild my life on my own terms. This experience has made me more cautious, yes, but also more aware of my boundaries. I won't let anyone treat me like a fool again. I'll listen to my instincts, and I'll never ignore the signs of a toxic relationship. I've learned that some people aren't worth the effort, and it's better to cut your losses than to stay and suffer in silence. I've also learned that revenge isn't really the point. What matters is healing, moving forward, and making sure I don't get burned again. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want you to know you're not alone, and you don't have to put up with someone who doesn't respect or value you. Trust yourself, gather your proof if you need to, and don't be afraid to walk away. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and dignity are what truly matter. It's hard, sure, but it's necessary. And I promise life will get better. You'll find your way back to happiness, stronger and wiser than before. Just hold on, stay true to yourself, and never settle for less than you deserve.